Hi friends, welcome into Teacher's Practice. This is a class called 3-Part Pigeon, where we're going to look at a technique practice, where we're going to talk about different ways in which we can build a supported pigeon and give you some variations that can maybe help give some variety to the pigeon, focus on different aspects, outer or inner groin, outer hip, inner groin, that are going to give you some elements that I think are really interesting, can be really helpful in creating space down there in the hips. And it's a version of the practice I really enjoy because it gives some variance and actually keeps us accountable when we're moving into a pose like this. I think the reason I want to do this practice is too often or very commonly pigeon pose can be seen as a resting pose or a pancake pose. You just kind of get in there and you flop down. And again, at times, of course, we all do that. And maybe that's more about finding a feeling in the pigeon as opposed to doing the work in the pigeon. But if we actually understand the purpose of the pose or the intention or the why we practice pigeon pose is to create elongation, to create structural, to create strength in the structure and to create elongation and length that creates space in the lower half of the body. And I think that's something that we're going to look at in this practice, and hopefully it'll be interesting for you. Nat is here today, and she's going to help us with some visuals. And if we're happy to, and you're ready to roll, what I'd like you to do, and I say this with a lot of love, I'd like you to start in frog pose, but in a frog pose that is realistic for you at this point. That's going to set up in her frog pose. You set up in your frog pose. And when I say realistic, I mean, respectfully, frog pose is a big pose. It's a big ask for a lot of us. And so I don't want you to think you need to open it wide and split it wide open. And it can feel really vulnerable or very on edge at the beginning of practice because we haven't worked into these spaces. However, I do want to start here because I want you to almost have an awareness point, a check-in point. It's kind of like, where are you now so we can see what we're working with? And of course, unless you're someone in the very small percentage who's super happy in pigeon or super all the way on the floor or wide open in a box splits, which is very few people, not me by any means, it's going to ask you to be really delicate here in the entrance of the pose. And what I'd like you to do as Nat's beginning, as your beginning, is almost I use the word rocking very lightly and very loosely, but almost more of like an investigation of just a forward and back movement. Now, if you were sitting from the side of Nat and I could see the side of your body, with the things I'm looking for this variation is I'm looking for hips stacked over knees, knees in line with ankles. So you have these right ankles built in the body. I also want to see a straight spine, so I don't want a cow pose or a sphinx pose. I want a straight spine, and I want shoulders over wrists and wrists in line with wrists and fingers. And so in many ways, it's similar to a tabletop in its structure, but at the same time, it's almost like you just pulled two legs of the table wider, and then it's more of like a triangle shape of the legs on two of them, and then parallel legs in the front. And so what that means is you're allowing the hips to widen, which means the weight of the body is moving into an unsupported space, hence the delicacy, and that rocking action back and forth is just kind of revealing to you the status of where you're starting in a hip pose like this. If it already feels like a lot, then soften out of it. You can bring your knees a little bit closer, or you can simply just exit the pose and meet us on your lap. We're going to be here for another moment or so as I finish talking about what we're talking through. And so as we start to work through into this practice, what I want to look at when we're looking at 3 parts of a pigeon is all the componentries that are necessary and helpful for that, which is going to be extra rotation of the front leg. It's going to be an aspect of control of movement through the thigh bones. It's going to be really making sure that there's buoyancy in our hips, hence why we're starting in frog pose, because I do want you to be buoyant in your hips. When I say buoyant, I mean the ability to not collapse to the floor, not just pancake down. And I find it very tricky for most people in frog pose to just let it all go and hit the floor. And so by doing a starting position here, it just allows us to say, this feeling of buoyancy or having accountability of the weight of your pelvis. It means that you can actually set yourself up through that insight through this techniques breakdown of the practice. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so there's different ways out of this. If it's already been a very long minute or so for you, you can simply slide forward onto your belly, or if you're okay to just walk your legs back into a tabletop shape. Bring your legs further in so your knees are together, and just go ahead and sit on your lap for a moment just to kind of reset. And as you do that, you can kind of just see, and that's almost doing this, you kind of like self-assist and kind of soothe a little bit, and that felt a little bit strenuous. And again, I'm well aware of the effort required to do a pigeon pose right out the gate. So please do that gently as you approach a practice like this. But as we're ready to go here now, I'd love you to just roll over into a tabletop shape and start to move your way into cat-cows. Now, yes, cat-cows are a great integration piece. They're a very good general warm-up for the spine. It is an element that you see in a lot of practice these days, and it will never bypass the value of simple integration, spinal movement. But because of the work we're doing in this pigeon pose, I do want us to make sure that there's value in all aspects as we start to layer on where we're going and what we're doing. Now, one thing I do want to tell you here as we get going is, yes, there's a lot of aspects in the hands, the shoulders, hands, arms, and shoulders in the front body when you're doing anything like this in a warm-up. What's really interesting in a pigeon pose is finding that line where the shoulders are supportive but not doing the majority of the work. So they become reference points, they become support points, they don't become primary structure points. And that's where you see a lot of people in things like a pigeon pose, they're holding themselves afloat in shoulders, and we'll get there. All right, so let's do a simple hip opening warm-up, which probably you've done before, which is nothing revolutionary, but we'll come to a tabletop shape. And from a tabletop shape, what I'd love for you to do is you'll use your right leg, and Nat's going to use her leg. So you can see is you're going to bring your leg out 90 degrees to the side, so it brings an L shape. And when I say 90 degrees, that idea, so you've got a 90-degree angle in the leg regardless of the height. And before you do any kind of circle rolling, any kind of movement, you just want to make sure there's structure on the upper side of the body, because it's really easy to dump over to the right side. And so now from this shape, start to circle the hip forward. Just kind of take some hip circles there. Nice big circling actions, keeping it nice and high through the thigh bone. I mean, the old school analogy, if you've been in yoga for, let's call it 10, 20, 30 years, is it's the old dog peeing on a fire hydrant analogy. And it's interesting. I have a dog, Gus, many of you know. He doesn't actually pee like that. He doesn't just kind of stick his leg up. He actually thinks about it structurally to make sure he's got balance. And he actually goes out and wide and does it to just kind of have this hinge action. So let's actually try this. Let's all be Gus for a second. Bring your knee down, Nat, and bring your knee down. And then I just want you to take it laterally out to the left, like you're literally just opening a wing or opening a leg to as high as it works for you, and then bring it back down towards your other thigh. Just do that a few times. And by doing it this way, rather than just circling through, you're starting to notice probably that your left glute is going to start firing up, but also we have what's called muscular compensation or structural compensation, where you're inevitably going to want to start to lean to the right more just because your brain says, I want to lift higher. I don't need you to lift higher. I need you to get the thigh bone up and out to the point where it fires up the outer glute, and that's totally fine, and that's all you need. Okay, put it down when you get down. Do the second side, please. You can lift it out to the side, and you can do a few circles just to get yourself set up, because that pattern of motion is quite nice. And you might find there's little clicks and pops along the way, and that's pretty normal when you start to work into postures like this, especially if you're practicing relatively, let's call it on the first part of the day, because the body hasn't done too much functional movement or weight-bearing movement. And the reality is most people aren't jumping out of bed doing pigeon poses or any kind of big hip things in their day, unless you are. So now let's open the hinge door. So be like Gus and give a little bit of that hip movement to the right side. But again, as you do this, I want you to really focus on structural support of the top body, structural support of your opposite side of the body. So you're literally just focusing on the hinge hip, or the hip of the hinge of the hip. And so it becomes targeted work. And that's really what this practice is, targeted work to the work that we're focusing on. Because it's always super easy to kind of blend it all together. And again, that's the point of a general flow. We're looking at specific things, specific pieces, specific techniques for the work we're going to do today. Wonderful. Next time it's down, float the tabletop, tuck your toes, lift your knees, and that's going to pull her knees up for a moment, and that's just that symmetrical engagement, and that's going to fire up the body. We'll take a big breath in, please, and then downward facing dog. Okay. Now, it's very easy when you get back to downward facing dog to forget all the things that we're doing, just because it's such a common pose where the default systems go back into bending the knees, wiggling the hips, all those kind of things. Not wrong, but I want you to kind of use this a little bit more functionally today. And I want you to think very specifically the work we just did with Gus. I'm not calling Nat Gus. I'm talking the idea of Gus. And so what I'd like you to do is with this right leg first, can you simply take the right leg and take it off the floor? So first things first, not even that high. Just line it up with your left leg or your other leg and flex the toes so it's literally just off the floor. Now take it out to the side. Whatever height it goes, pause, where it's not trying to go back and it's not tilting the hips over. So what you'll see even with Nat here, the leg is trying to go further back because the brain wants to go higher. Good, bring it back in. Good, now from here, do that one more time just so you feel that pattern of action. Beautiful, bring it back in. One more time for good measure. Don't go further, just refine your actions. Right, bring it back in. Now from here, change nothing other than bringing your knee towards your left rib cage. So it's not cat pose, it's just knee towards the left rib cage. So on the side of the body, so as if the knee was still in its natural position. Good, now open the hinge door one more time, take it out to your side. Yeah, good. It's not gonna go far, it doesn't need to go far. Good, keep flowing through that one or two more times. What we're doing is we're literally just targeting in with isolation that movement pattern that we're going to explore. After you do the third round of it, super simple. Just bring the knee back in, pause, don't put it down, but take it all the way up to the sky, three-legged dog. And then bend the knee and roll the hip open. So this is a super simple action that very commonly comes into play when you're doing a hip-based pose, three-legged down dog. I mean, most people like it. I quite like this version of a down dog, and it's just spacious. But what I do want you to do is focus on the need of it, and that's lengthening out this line along the hip flexor psoas line. So feel the thigh bone lengthen up and back. Take a big breath in, and then downward facing dog. Wonderful. Do the second side. So the second side starts back with a straight leg rising out. So you breathe in and you send, bring the leg down, Matt. So it's going out to your right side or your left side, whatever side you're on. And it's just kind of those side actions, those frontal movement patterns. And again, this is going to get into the deep upper groin. It's going to allow that aspect of abduction to control its movement. And even just doing it 2 or 3 times means you're starting to switch on those tiny little action points that go high up and deep into the muscular movement. Good. Then bend the knee towards the rib cage and then take it out and flare it out like a side wing or like Gus on the fire hydrant. Same idea. Now I know the arms can feel strong and can start to feel heavy because you've been in a version of down dog for a while. And all we're really doing is really putting ourselves in this position to just open and close, open and close. Good. Then take it all the way back up, peel the heel open, three-legged down dog. And this is really going to test your ability to focus on isolated movements. Bend the knee, roll the hip open. There. And again, it's your upside down, so everything can feel a little bit backwards. But at the same time, what we're doing is we're really peeling open. So now we want this thigh a little bit higher and a little bit more open. Yes, take a big breath in. Downward facing dog. Well done, everyone. Super. Now from this shape, drop your knees down and pause for a moment. And as you sit up, and that's going to do this forward, is I'd like you to set up for a 90-90 in the body. So it's a right leg at 90 degrees and a back leg at 90 degrees. And so what that will tend to mean for you is that your right leg will come in front of you like 90 degrees, and your back leg will be out to the side like 90 degrees. Now, first things I'd like you to do, if you have them available, is I'd like you to put blocks nearby you because I want to give you some little bit of detailed work to do. So blocks will be where the hands would go. And first things first, what I want you to first do, if possible, is lift yourself up and just put yourself down on purpose. So you're essentially tucking the tailbone back, so you're scooting the butt back. And if you have a look at me, Nat, and you have a look at me, you're scooting the bum back and then allowing the pelvis to come back to neutral. Yeah, good. And what you're going to feel is this external rotation through the front body. And that's really good at this, where she can still sit relatively high up or relatively towards neutral. Some people, and I mean me included sometimes, when you get in this 90-90 shape, you almost feel like you need to be over to one side. And if that's you, that's not wrong at all. I just would rather you on your fingertips. So it means that you're essentially creating a lift. Otherwise, if you go flat hand and shoulder up, you end up just hanging out and lagging, which switches off the work in the legs and moves the spine into a curved lumbar position. So if you're more like a straight spine, or if you're a little bit more leaned like I am, both are absolutely fine. And what you can do, and I'm just going to borrow Nat's block for a second, is if you are a little bit more leaned on fingertips, you can use a block on the other side, because sometimes you can't reach the floor. So asymmetrical length is totally fine, but I'm still creating that lift. Okay, so as you do that, and Nat's going to use blocks just so you have the example, is I want you to first start by pressing your shin bone down, so you have this effort. So not necessarily the knee, but you are really gripping the floor. And then I want you to feel like your front left thigh is externally rotating for a moment. Good. And then all I'd like you to do, and let's see what happens in Nat's body, and we'll move this for a moment. Let's go fingertips just so we can see. Is I'd like you to very simply, it's all right, I'll take this out of your way. Is like you to very, not simply, because it's not simple, is I'd like you to lift this back ankle. Good. Now you'll see it doesn't need to go far or much. And it can be quite a lot of effort and work. So a little lift of that back ankle, that internal rotation, but you have to press through the front leg, front thigh. Good, and put it down. And just do that 3 or 4 times. See how that goes to lift. Good. So now if you look at here, and we'll just look at Nat with love and kindness in our eyes, she's counteracting it by lifting her front leg. I want to keep the front leg stuck to the floor and just let this be a millimeter, if it's a millimeter or a centimeter. Good. Thighs moving towards the floor. It's just that ankle lifting. Good. And it can feel like visually nothing's happening, but you can probably see by Nat's focus and effort that she's trying to do work here. Toes are engaged, and you're just creating that little bit of engagement and effort through the back line of the internal rotated back leg. Good. Pause for a second. And that's really what we want to look at as we start these kind of poses, is the subtle, nuanced elements that can create effort in the back line, so internal rotation, length the hip flexor, effort of pressing in the front. And then here's what I'd like you to do, and this is more of a management of weight, if possible, is I'd like you to push the arms down, lift the hips one more time, right? And then lift your front leg. If you can't get the bum off the floor, you can do the same thing and just lift your front leg completely like this. So everyone just release for a second. Let's just try that a little bit more simple. Keep the bum down and lift the whole front leg up. Good. If you'd like, lift the bum up as well. And then put it down. You can see how that effort is happening. So Nat's going to do the version with her bum stays down. So I'd like us all to lift the front leg. Good. And then pull the lean back in. So almost feel like your thigh bone is moving towards your chest. Good. And then almost start to reach the chest forward. Perhaps can you reach the fingers forward? So essentially it's a non-weight bearing pigeon variation. And then release. It's actually a lot more work than it looks like. It's quite challenging at times. So that one more time. Inhale, lift the front leg. Lean forward. Press your seat down, and then release. Beautiful. This back leg, bring that in front. And even if you can double pigeon, I don't want you to double pigeon. I want you to box the front legs. So you're essentially in this shape where the seat is a box. And if you have a block, and I'll give you a block as well, I want you to sit on top of a block. Yeah. And sitting on top of a block, even if you do have a double pigeon, we're not doing that. We're doing a box pigeon. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to feel this idea of lifting, shuffling the bum back, and turning the pelvis forward. You can watch me first. Lift, shuffle, turn. Go ahead and try that now. Good. And what you'll feel is straight away the pelvis will turn forward. And it's almost like you're falling off the front. And I want you to just very simply lean to the depth that works for you. For me, yeah, you can go here. You can go here, you can go wherever you need to go, but I'd say for today, let's not go past forearms, or in fact, let's even stay on fingertips with straight arms. And what I really want you to feel is how it's starting to switch all this on and requiring you to create, to feel an opening. Now I want you to feel like your hips are staying on the bolster. So now I want you coming off the bolster, almost push your hands down so you're pushing your hips back. Does that make sense? Take a big breath in. Then exhale, come on back. Good. Place your feet in front of you just like this and just let your knees go side to side. You can always put your hands back if you need a little bit more space in the hip flexors. But by doing this kind of work, we're just kind of integrating back this sense of opening. Okay, let's do the second side, please. Set up for a 90-90 going the other way. So whichever leg you did last time, put the other leg forward and shift the other leg into the 90 shape. Mats can come back into the middle of the mat so you can see it. I'll move out of the way. And again, if you need blocks, you use blocks. But the idea is not necessarily that the spine is straight or even that the pelvis is straight, because depending on the way your body is set up, depending on the tightness of your hips, it might not be realistic or achievable. But what we want to do is try to keep length through the left side. Is a nice way to think about it. And then just start by simply lifting that back leg just a fraction. Good. You can see Nat's working hard. You're working hard. And you put it down and do that a few times. You don't have to hold it and sustain it. Just it's a little lift and a put down, a little lift and a put down. And what's nice about this is you want to notice that effort that takes to do that internal rotation across the back line of the glute, across the back saddle towards the sacrum. All right, and then let's do the front leg, please. So how did we do the front leg? We kept the seat down and we lift the whole front leg for a moment. Good. And whether it's a millimeter or centimeter, whether you lift it a little bit higher, it's that feeling of lift and wrapping it open. Lift and wrap it open. Lift and wrap it open. Good. And then maybe you can walk your hands further forward. You don't have to, but maybe it's there for you. Right? And as you do that, as that lift comes, as you lift in that front leg and you walk leg over, you start to feel things happening that you're like, ooh, I'm not sure what's happening. It's the effort focused on the detail of either the fold or the hip flexor it needs to sustain. Okay. Come on back. Block pigeon or box pigeon. You can put yourself into that shape. For me, automatically, I'm going to go lift, scoot, and turn. That's going to put my pelvis in a slight anterior tilt, which is going to better position me for any fold I'm naturally going to do. But this version of the fold I'd like you to do is like you take your thumbs, put them into the tops of your femur, ground your femur into the floor, move your elbows back so your shoulder blades draw together and the collarbones widen, and then lean forward. You're not going to go as far forward, but it's almost like your thumbs are going to get swallowed up by your legs there for a second, and almost see if you can squeeze the thumbs and then keep them in place. As you do that, don't try to reach your nose to the floor, but rather try to reach the crown of your head forward and up. So you're kind of lengthening out. See what that feels like. Any different? Good. Take a big breath in, long breath out. Good. Come on back up. Take your hands behind you. Let your knees go side to side. So what I really love about a practice like this, or a techniques practice like this, is we're just really focusing on the specifics. Now, other things that I think are necessary when we get a pigeon pose is before we go all the way down to the floors, we still need to strengthen our legs in structure. So when you're done with this, however long you need here, see if you can join me back in downward facing dog, please. So now if you hand me that block, and we'll just get that out of the way. When you get into downward facing dog, what I'd like you to do is very simply and very straightforward, lift your right leg to the sky and step to a low lunge in the body. And from that low lunge shape, right knee down, keep the toes tucked for this variation. Hands go up towards the sky. And for the moment, I'm not too worried about the arms, because we're not going to structurally use the arms too much, but I do want the arms to be helpful for the work we're doing. So rather than arms up, I'd like arms straight down by your sides, which means that we're not going to tempt any back bend. We're just going to keep structure in the body. Now, to work the front leg and work the hip flexor, what I'd like to do is I'd like you to lift that front heel, please. And then keep the lunge a little bit further. Now, the way I tend to talk about it is when you're working with knee and ankle, especially in the front one, classically you were taught knee over ankle, not wrong, but there's more to it. So I talk about it as tracking and stacking, or tracking or stacking. And tracking means like a railroad track. It can go past the knee, it's totally fine, or past the ankle, it's totally fine. That's what you do when you walk upstairs. Stacking might give you the feeling of more stability, but tracking is still healthy for the knee, so you can go past it or back off the knee, and you find that tracking, stacking way of doing the pose. Good, now from this shape, the toe was here at the front of the body. We're lifting the heel and the hips are still moving forward. Can you come a little bit further? Good. And what we're doing now is that feeling of effort in the front leg, effort in the back leg. Now let's switch it. Heel down, untuck your back toe. Now what I'd like you to do is, as you do this action, I'd like you to lift your left knee just a fraction off the floor. So lift this up and push through the top of your foot. Now this is really going to switch on the line of the hip flexor. And with these arms, I'd like you to take these arms and just reach them forward as if you were almost going to pigeon pose. So almost like you were reaching forward, pigeon pose, fingertips on the floor. Good. Give me fingertips on the floor feeling. Yeah. And then reach your spine longer. Knee is still off the ground. Good. Now what you need to do is think about right hip sucking in and down. Structure through the ball of that right foot. Knee, see how it's slightly floating, but it's definitely working. Take a big breath in and release. Back to the low lunge. Good. You can move the hips back a little bit to give yourself space. And it can be this subtle work and effort that's structurally focusing on where we're going. Okay, hands down, step back, downward facing dog. Meet us at the back, and we're going to go second side. Well done, everyone. Take a big breath in. Long breath out. Actually, before we do second side, we're going to do one more side on the same side. One more thing on the same side, just because I want to work through this right side and then the left side before we hit the floor. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to take a block and place a block under your right hand. So put your right hand on a block like you were going to do an asymmetrical downward facing dog on a block, straight forward. Lift your right leg, put your right foot on the right block, low lunge, left knee to the floor, untuck your left foot. So now we have height in front of us. Wonderful. Now, sometimes you might find hands up might give you this feeling of more stability. So if that does help, you're welcome to do that as long as you don't put a back bend in the body. But to help with that, let's first start by reaching. So lean forward, reach your arms forward. Yes. So we have essentially all the components of a pigeon pose, but just in this lunge-like shape. Now, here's what we want to start by doing. Exactly what we did last time. Lift this front heel, please, and see what that feels like. Yeah. And again, we adjust slightly. Good. And you just notice that feeling of pressing down, but the hip drawing back. But I really want this hip flexor line to lengthen. You can put your heel down, pause, toes untucked, lift that left knee. Yeah. Good. Now, usually when we do this version of the back leg, we then find a back bend. But what I'd really like you to do is find a long leg. So potentially, Nat, me at home, straighten this back left leg and keep reaching forward. Press, 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 press. Reach, 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 reach. Good. Take a big breath in. Now downward facing dog. So we're actually going to do the whole right side before we go left side, just because we're working through this. And so now we're here. It's going to be a helpful version of this. Okay, so here's what I'd like you to do. Come down to your knees, please. Now you're going to face forward, and that way we can do this together. And what I'd like you to do is, as you come down, I'd actually like you to sit on your bum, feet forward. Yep. And we're going to take a figure 4 action. We're working our right leg, and you should be working your right leg. But what I'd like you to do, and use your hands to help, is just place your right leg up, and just for a moment, create a little bit of a bouncing action, right? This aspect of engage and release can be helpful for some to kind of build a little bit of elasticity in the movement. And what I'd like you to do is, maybe if this is enough for you, you just work with this, right? The other option of what you can play with as we start to move and work through this pose is you can do one of two things. You can put your leg straight or bent. You figure it out as you go. I'm going to start with bent. And Nat's going to stay here, and I'm going to do this version where I'm literally just going to cup my foot and I'm going to draw my leg towards me. Yep. And you can do this with either version. And sometimes you hear it called like rock the baby. But what I'm doing is I'm creating no weight bearing effort on this front external rotation. Now, not just side to side. What tends to happen is this front foot starts to dip down. So I actually want the heel to lift, and then I want the heel to press away, so towards you. And what that's going to do is you're going to feel that switch on the inner thigh of your lifted leg. And now at the same time, I want you to feel like your shin bone and your thigh bone are pressing forward. And it's going to feel like a long line in the leg forming on the outside of the leg. Now lift your heel a bit higher. You can lower that a few times. And what you're really doing is you start to rock side to side and up and down. You're just seeing where the lines of effort in the body have a little bit of maybe delicacy. Good. Big breath in. And exhale. Place it right back in front of you in the box pose. If you're staying with that, you just stay up top. You just place it down, let it go, and then you just take a forward fold. Right? So you take the fold here in this shape, whether you're in a figure 4 or the box. And again, we've been here or versions of here before, but all this is really doing is allowing this to, again, reconnect to the needs or the components of what's going to be working in a pigeon pose. All right, let's release that and get set up to work down towards the floor. So let's come back into downward facing dog, please. And from a downward facing dog, first things first, let's just see how we set up for it. And I'd like you all to lift your right leg to the sky. You can bend the knee and roll your hip open because that tends to be a very traditional entrance for a lot of people. And let's go to half pigeon pose, Ekapada Raja Kapotasana 2, please. Now pause as moment the shin comes down, so don't go any further yet. And this is a lot of people are going to look at here with us today is the stop, drop, and collapse. So I'd like you to put your left knee down, keep your toe tucked. Now here's where we have this feeling of buoyancy needed. Now for Nat and especially for you, the hands are too shallow for me. So I'd like the hands to work a little bit further forward and then come onto the fingertips. So before you put blocks in, before you start propping things up, I want you to actually be sustainable in your pigeon pose. And so this here means we've done the work of front leg being able to press down to the floor, and we want the hips and the pelvis to still be moving backwards, and we have the knee and the toes tucked, so we do have that action of effort going into it. Now, one way to see where we're at with it is to press the legs down, 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 and potentially can we start to bring our right hand to our hip and our left hand to our hip and sit all the way up. Yes. Now from here, this can, Nat's very strong, so it can appear that this is relatively easy for her, but I promise it's working for everyone. You are working for everyone, and we're going to make sure that there's a relevancy here. Now, this might be a great place for you to be because this can already be enough. And if it's strong and you've already kind of used up all the gas in the tank, just come back to the fingertips. So Nat, come down, and you come down for a second. And you can see just by doing what I call like a hand check, you're checking, am I sustainable in a pose like this? Do I have the structure underneath me? Do I have the buoyancy under my hips? So come on back up. Let's do a hand check. And this is a nice place to be. This is option 1. You stay with this. Option 2 is I'd like you to lean forward at a diagonal. Now again, this now becomes strong pressing down into the floor so you can keep that lift in the hips. You do need to press through the back leg to keep that length. And your last check can also be, if you want, hands long. Good. And this is a lot. It's a strong posture in the sustainable action. But what we're doing is we're getting the spine out of the hips. Good. Everyone rest for a moment. And when I say rest, don't collapse. Just put your hands down. But you can already tell, probably because you're getting increasingly warmer or the breath is working harder, the need for this focus. Does that make sense? Okay, so now we've done this little hand check. What I'd like to do is I'd like to make a little bit more space in the pose. In order to make a little bit more space in the pose, what I'd like you to do is to press the front leg down so much so, and then lift your back leg and just walk it back maybe a centimeter or 2. Good, and essentially what you're doing is you're taking the whole saddle of your hips back. As you do that, great, walk your hands forward 2 or 3 more centimeters. Now, so the line of your arms is long. So that is long here in the body. Knee is still grounded. This foot is flexed to help you create stability. Now what I'd like you to do is change nothing else in the body, and potentially now you can stay, or the other option I'd like you to do is you can put the knee down, keep the toes tucked, and then walk your hands even further forward. Good, beautiful. If I was to say, could you lift your hips a millimeter? You should still be able to lift your hips a millimeter. And for today, I don't want you even going down on the forearms. I want you to stay on the fingertips. Or you want to stay on the fingertips. My beloved teacher, Annie Carpenter, she calls these cupcake hands because it means that if I had a cupcake I wanted you to protect with your fingers, I could put it under here and your hands are strong enough to make sure the cupcake doesn't smush. So that strength in the hands gives length in the arms, space in the body, and support in the body. And you can see this means that is working. Now, what I'd like you to do, and I'm asked not to do the same, is that if you have a look at me, I want your right hip to go back and down. And you want your right hip to go back and down. So your fingers are it's almost like a drop of water going off the front of a curved surface or the front of a car hood. So you're essentially allowing your tailbone, your butt cheek to go down like that. And that's what we're feeling in this. And we're still working because there's a buoyancy in this pose. Right? Now that we've been here for a moment or two, what I'd like you to do is rather than collapse further, we're going to do our 3-part pigeon. So this is the variation 1 where you're staying buoyant in the pose. So the second variation is now going to give us some deep outer hip stretch and allow us to use a push-pull action with the hands. So what you're going to see Nat doing, and you can try this in your body, is you're going to have to shift the weight into your right fingertips because your left hand is coming to the outside of your right knee. Don't worry, on the second side, we'll do this facing forward so you can have a look at that. And then as this right hand starts to slides out to the right side, so it comes out at a 45-degree angle, the head can lengthen towards the floor, but I want you to almost draw the knee and the thigh across the body. Now, yes, you might say, can I untuck my toe here? You could, there's nothing wrong with it, but today we're going to keep the toe tucked just for consistency's sake. And as you start to create this resistance line between the left hand and the right knee, you're going to feel the outer right glute start to really light up. But I do want you to keep this left hip still rolling down. Good, so the torso itself can even come out to the 45 a little bit as well. Yeah. And what's nice about this is traditional pigeon pose gets you into a certain kind of place with the leg and the hip. The second part pigeon lets you really get into the outer hip, and frankly, it's just a really nice stretch. The third part of the pigeon is the inner groin pigeon. And to do that, you'll release your left hand, and your right hand, even though it'll stay forward, it's going to come all the way to the top left side of the mat. And your body's going to move to the left. And your left hand is going to move to the inside of the left foot. And as you do that, you're going to allow the body to maybe even let the elbow move to the floor, line up the forearm to the leg. Yeah, there we go. And you're going to push up the heel of the foot, right? You're pushing up the heel of the foot, which essentially is just moving the bottom leg externally. And this reaching action gives you access space. And it's a really nice thing. You can drop the head here if that's nice for you. But again, what you're doing is you're moving into, not a twist, but you're moving into an access point to create external wrapping. How does that feel? Then take a big breath in, long breath out. And then here's the way out that I usually teach it. Come on back through the middle, both hands forward, cupcake the hands, lift the spine. Good. And then I'm going to say lift your spine up to 45 degrees. Bring your hands to your hips, lift your spine up to neutral, or the version of neutral of pigeon. So in that way, I still know you're with me. Take a big breath in, and then hands to the floor, downward facing dog. Take a moment for yourself in downward facing dog. It's a lot to do in the legs, and you're going to feel all kinds of way. You're going to feel all kinds of something when you do this version of a pigeon pose variation, and I think it's a really interesting version that I think can add a lot to a typical pigeon pose. And it can kind of stave off this idea that we're just collapsing and hanging out. In practice, you call like a version of a sleeping swan and these kind of things. But I actually really like the fact that we're looking at it quite specifically as a pigeon variation. All right, so we got to do the whole second side. Let's see if we remember where we're going. We're going to start with those lunges. So go ahead, left leg sky, lunge. So from the lunge, the knee goes down to the floor, please. Hands go straight down by your sides. Good. We'll do this relatively straightforward because you've been here before, and obviously I want to get to the 3-part pigeon, so you have this action. You have this ability to move the hips forward to track the knee, and then you'll lift the heel, so you have that feeling in the body. See how that feels? Wonderful. And then you put the heel down, you'll untuck the back toe, and then you'll lift the back knee. You can reach your arms up if that's helpful. You can reach your hands down, but we're going to come at that diagonal lunge shape. Remember, we got the options. You can kick hands forward, like long cupcake pigeon hands. And that feeling is just hip flexor line. Take a big breath in, please. Downward facing dog. Second version is hand on block. Go ahead and step your left foot up to that. Good, so as that comes on up into this pigeon shape, this lunge shape, she has the option of playing with the pieces. What are our pieces? Heel up. That's one piece of the puzzle. Lunging forward. What's the other piece of the puzzle? Right? The other piece of the puzzle is heel down, untuck the back toe, lift the knee. And maybe that leg goes a little bit, or maybe it goes towards straight. But that pressing down, the pressing down, even though the ball is untucked, because when we do tuck the toe, it makes the effort even easier, but this version makes the hip flexor work harder. Take a big breath in. Down dog. Well done you, well done Nat. Well done me, I'm helping. But great job, you're all doing a wonderful job. Take a big breath in, please. And a long breath out. And drop your knees down, sit on your butt. Figure 4 action of the legs. And we're going to do a rock the baby cradle. Okay, so it's a left leg. I'll do the full cradle version. So you've got a few versions. You've got figure 4 version, or you've got full cradle version. And you just play in this space for a little bit just to see how that left leg is doing. Do make sure that your prep is on the right side of the correct side of the body, because we've got left leg prepped because we're going to left leg pigeon. If you sometimes get your brain backwards and kind of, if I was doing a left leg prep and doing a right leg pigeon, it kind of renders it a little bit pointless. But as you can see, we're getting ourselves ready. Side to side is nice. Heel up and down is nice. Pressing forward is nice. And that kind of puts you in the best position for these pigeon variations. Whew. Shall we pigeon? We shall. Downward facing dog. All right, friends. So with our 3-part pigeon, the first pigeon is just a pigeon that has structure. So left leg to the sky, bend the knee, roll the hip open. Let's see where Nat lands. Let's see where you land. And wherever the shin bone lands is absolutely fine. Put the knee down, but change nothing else. Good. Now give me buoyancy and lift. Walk your fingertips forward so you're out of the shoulders. And then first things first, make sure everything's pressing down. So it's strong fingers like it's a piano, imprints into the sand. And you can try hands to hips maybe. Hand check. Good. That's a really nice way to set up and set in for this. You don't have to do this, of course. I tend to do this because it shows me the students are accountable in their actions. Okay. Second option is you can lean forward at a diagonal. You can also rest in between, totally fine. Or you can lengthen your arms forward. All those things ensure that the legs are working and we're there. Okay, bring your fingers down to the floor. So now Nat's essentially in her pigeon variation for today. And she's still sustained, right? So her hips are still elevated. She's still active in the back leg. And remember, with the fingertips, she's almost going to move them away so her tailbone goes down and back. Bring your hips a little bit lower. There you go. And you might find by doing that, you need to walk the back leg back a little bit. That's great. Pigeon is a pose that takes up a lot of space, and that's necessary and normal. Big breath in, long breath out. If the space is there, walk your fingers even further forward so the body comes almost low to the floor. And so that's that first variation. Now you at home, you stay where you are. That's going to face forward just so you can see what's going on a little bit better, perhaps. And as she finds her way into her pigeon variation, okay, she's going to reset back up where she is. Actually, not shuffle back a little bit more just so we don't lose you in the room. There you go. And then arms forward like she's in her structured buoyant pigeon. Okay, so that's pigeon 1. Pigeon 2 is the pigeon that we're moving with the knee. So right hand is going to go over across the body to the knee. Just for a moment there, get your left hand out of the way just so we can see it. So see how the hand is cupping the knee. And so even though nothing moves, and that's going to be drawing the knee this way, notice the knee is stuck to the floor, so it has that resistance line, which helps light up the whole line of the left side. Good, you can put your left hand back in place. So that left leg now allows the body to kind of move at a diagonal. So actually what's going to happen is the whole torso is going to go a little bit to the left at a diagonal, as if you were up the top edge of your mat. And then you're going to reach out for it. Your head can lengthen or lower. And what you're doing is you're continually drawing the right arm across to stretch out the line of the hip. And then you might have to go find the place that works best. It could be out to the left a little bit. It could be back to the middle. You explore knowing that the focus is here. And again, we've got toes tucked, we've got buoyant hips, we're still doing the work, we're not just collapsing. And then third pigeon comes the other way. So left hand goes to the cross, find the inseam of the foot, let the elbow move down if that's there, and you're just pushing up this line in the legs. And what's really nice about it is you're essentially just peeling open your inner left thigh. You know, you might not be able to see the detail, but this inner thigh is just peeling itself open, which is super, super nice. And that's still structured. If you had a low perspective here now, you can still see there's space under here. She hasn't hit the floor. She's not collapsing. She's still staying strong, right? Take a big breath in, long breath out. Now remember, the way that you get out, you got to come through pigeon 1. Then you have to come on up and lift the spine, hands to your hips. So I know you're still structured. Downward facing dog. Okay, now you can come back to your mat. Well done, everyone, in a downward facing dog. You might need to pedal out the feet. You might need to give yourself a little bit of space. It might even feel nice for you to go through a chaturanga and spend a moment in upward facing dog just because of the hip flexor line. And that can be something you can try right now if that's nice for you. Take a full breath in. Good. And then downward facing. Drop your knees down and pause for a moment. And go ahead and set yourself up for your frog pose again as I start to tell you, I suppose, the closing details of a practice like this. And again, as always with these techniques practices, it doesn't have kind of that full class flow. I'm targeting our focus on the work we're doing. And as you come back to this, you might realize, hey, there's a lot more space. Or you might realize, hey, there's still no more space, and that's okay. What is quite nice is this feeling of opening the body into space, but also we do need to make sure we put the body back together. And I'll show you how we do that. If you've practiced with me before or for a long time, you know the answer is usually symmetrical engagement. But for the sake of this, we sit back into this frog pose just to reconnect, to reset, and to see how it is. What I really like about a practice like this is that it challenges us to be intentional. It asks us to be purposeful, and there's no hiding and no resting, quote unquote, and you have to do everything on purpose. That's effectively what's relevant about practices like this. You've been here for a few moments. You don't need to be here for longer. If you have lots of time, you can stay here for all day if you want. But it's just that feeling of just letting your body just to almost feel and notice how you are one last time here. Take a big breath in, long breath out. Go ahead and gently find your way out of this pose. You can slide forward like Nat's doing here. And then you just want to roll onto your back, please. Nat, put your head on this side, please. And as you lie onto your back, just straight away, don't rest, come into bridge pose. And just do a few flowing bridges. No hands, just the bridge, just come up and down. This is that symmetrical engagement I was talking to you about. It's just kind of giving a sense of putting everything back together. Sometimes it's as simple as feet down, hips up, that allow you to feel like everything is coming back to the midline. Now, at the same time, I know sometimes in practice, it doesn't feel like it's coming back to the midline. So actually, I do need the full counter. So hips stay down, wrap your right leg over like eagle pose. And then let your shins hover like 90 degrees and then just move the whole body away. And this is quite nice. Put the hands, the flats of your hands all the way high onto your thighs. Slide them all the way up to your hips and then just push. And that can be quite nice as well. And that kind of internal rotation can just kind of have this feeling of kind of wrapping it up together. So bring the feet together. So we don't want external, we want internal. There we go. And then push. So both of those variations can be super nice ways to put yourself back together, quote unquote. And then switch into the other side if you'd like the other side. And typically when you get to the end of a practice like this, you find that Shavasana perhaps is not overly appealing, legs down, toes out, because that's external. So again, the nice way to finish your practice is, before we get there, it will be feet down, knees together, and that's going to give that internal wrapping. But what I do think is a nice way to finish is just put your legs straight in the air and just give them a little wiggle. Just kind of a little wiggle. You can tap on the legs and just kind of make sure there's circulation there. It's just kind of like saying, okay, good work, us. Well done, team. And then bend your knees, put your feet down, let your knees touch and your feet widen. And that can be a nice way to kind of close your practice. Now I'm going to leave you here on the floor. Now it's going to stay down. You can stay down. But what I will say in this practice is that the point of this was to give you some variation of Pigeon, to give you some accountability in Pigeon, and to do it in a way that I think is going to be really valuable in building the strength to open, to strength to lengthen. And that's what I find is really valuable in a Pigeon pose practice, is it's not about flopping, it's not about pancaking, it's not about just melting into the floor, it's about the strength to open, it's about the strength to lengthen and giving yourself that space to be structured and open. Because that's a lot of times the way in which we sustain our practice and grow in the practice, is building the necessary pieces or the components of strength that allow us to stay open, not just be open. So of course, as always, if you're happy to stay where you are and you'd like to stay longer, you do that. And if you'd like to close the practice with me, you can just find your way up now into a final seated position. So come on up now, and for those of you who want to close with us, eyes closed, place your hands wherever that's nice for you. And actually, probably the nicest way to close, and Nat will do this as well, is just come onto your lap, onto your seat, so legs together. And I just think after a practice like this, or a Pigeon pose practice like this, legs together is almost like a nice way to seal it all together, but also it has this feeling of neutrality or parallelity. Is that a word? Parallelness. You kind of just feel like everything's coming back to the middle. So we seal the practice very simply. We honor the space of learning through action. And we give ourselves the gift of these moments like this to expand what we know, deepen what we feel, and use these as techniques that can help us along the way. Take a full breath in together. Long exhale. If you'd like, together we say, Namaste. Thanks y'all for practice. Thank you, Nat, for helping out. Hopefully this was an interesting one for you today. And I'm always so glad when I see pigeons out there flying around the right way with structure and support. And I hope that these variations were insightful and interesting as something you can take with you. Thanks for practicing. We'll see you again soon.